Welcome to the Femsplainers. I'm Danielle Crittenden, and welcome to our special Father's Day edition. Got a great show for you. Great guests. Our interview guest for this episode is Matt Feeney. He's the author of Little Platoons, A Defensive Family in a Competitive Age. And he writes about how competition amongst our peers, other parents, is really undermining good parenting, and also competition within institutions that we're having to prepare, or we think we have to prepare our kids for college before they're even born. So he's going to come on and discuss this book, which is really interesting. But I thought up the top, joining me for the cocktail portion of the podcast, I'd bring on mansplainer extraordinaire David Frum, spoiler alert, my husband, to talk about why it is so hard to buy gifts for men, especially fathers. It's just an eternal question. And I think everyone who is listening to this has experienced it. And so David, who is normally tasked to talk about politics, we always love to have him on the podcast to talk about anything but politics, because actually his secret power is his ability to really talk about anything in a super interesting way. So let me first bring on David. David, welcome to the Femsplainers, or in your case, the Mansplainer, the Dadsplainer.
You mean welcome back?
Well, yes, you've been on this program many times, and it's always great to have you back.
We are going to go candid here. This is a re-record of a failed attempt earlier in the week to prepare a Father's Day podcast.
You didn't have to mention that. You didn't have to mention that. You didn't have to mention that I failed at the technology of recording this podcast. You didn't have to mention that.
But it's given me a chance to rethink some of the things I want to say, because one of our themes before was you caught me unawares about what did I want for Father's Day. And now I have a long list.
Oh, okay, good. Because as you know, in our household in June, I feel like I have a semi-automatic gift gun held to my head, because there's Father's Day, there's your birthday, and there's our wedding anniversary. So I have to come up with.
I give you presents on our anniversary. You don't give me presents.
Oh, I believe it's been done. And actually, well, if you want to call me out on bail, like sometimes you forget to give me gifts on our anniversary. Let's be candid. If we're being candid here, David, truth telling.
No. So this year I do have a good anniversary gift, but I thought we agreed that the view was that on an anniversary, the husband gave the wife a gift because the wife was the gift to the husband.
Well, that's a very nice way of putting it, and it would be more effective if you remembered sometimes.
No, you're going to be impressed. You're going to be impressed. And all I can say is, if you hear scratching and woofing sounds from inside a box, just
it's a puppy. All right. Well, you are here in your capacity as truly an expert mansplainer, a mansplainer extraordinaire on so many topics that I think you can answer the question of why are men in general, maybe dads in particular, hard to buy gifts for.
Yes.
I don't know why, but it's and this happens especially in June. The kids start calling me, what am I going to get Dad? And it's a tough problem.
Well, there are two problems. First, I think most of the things men want, and men want things, of course, but most of the things they want come with really big numbers beside them. I mean, you can't ask the 8-year-old and 10-year-old to get you a new boat. You just can't. And I mean, however long their paper
sports car,
however hard they work at the paper route or in the mill, they're not bringing a boat home. And the second problem, of course, is that it's still true in most families, and most American families are now 2-income families. But in most families, the father brings home the somewhat larger part of the income, and
that's because of discrimination and unequal pay for women.
Well, that all may be as it is, but the fact is that every gift is a new problem for the father's budgeting, and and the gifts to him, like it is kind of like trying to make it, losing money on every sale and making it up on volume. That it's nice to have the present, but it might be also nice not to have the budgetary worries.
Well, didn't you tell me on our dog walk, in fact, today, you told me a rather alarming statistic about the true transfer of wealth in this country, and it's not one feminists would want to advertise.
Oh, well, this is I'm not going to have the numbers on this, but as the feminists point out, that American men continue to earn much, much more than American women. And so that if you were to look at all the income flows to men, they're much bigger than all the flows to women. But then when you talk to the Madison Avenue people, you discover that women are spending $2 out of 3 in the American economy, and much of them for like food and breakfast cereal and toothpaste and things like that. But still, the majority of buying decisions in the American economy are made by women. So how does this work? That the majority of the money is earned by men and the majority of the spending decisions are made by women? I mean, there must be an income transfer here going on the scale of the Marshall Plan.
Right. Okay. So I get the point that men don't want expensive gifts, especially if they feel it's coming out of their pocket.
Yeah, they do want expensive gifts, but not from their own household budget. I mean,
right, okay.
like if Bill Gates calls you and says, "I'd like to buy you a boat," you're probably not going to say no. But I guess it comes with the secret microchip. That's the problem.
Because he can track your boat.
Yeah, he wants to track your boat. But the problem is it's going to come out of your budget, and so that's the thing. Worry about. I mean, one of the things you often hear is there's this new concept of emotional labor, and you hear so often women say that men don't understand what women are worrying about. And you think, well, maybe I'm sure that's true, but also women don't understand always what men are worrying about in the small hours of the morning. And that is baby shoes. How am I going to pay for those?
Right. Or my boat. Okay. So one of the issues is that the things that men want are often very expensive.
Yes.
But then, okay. So I accept that. But then you'd think there'd be a whole lot of things that weren't expensive that they would want. And I've made a list of categories that I think capture when we're trying to think of what to get the men in our lives, they fall under these categories. And you can tell me what you think. Gadgets. So think the sharper image catalog. Yes. Why do these Madison Avenue think men love gadgets so much?
Yeah, well, I think the sharper image catalog, which was a huge deal in the 90s, isn't so big now. I mean, the problem, of course, is that.
But the concept is right? Like you're looking for the flashlight that also lights your cigar. But they're not going to work, and that's the problem. I mean men are vulnerable to this. I mean, we all like gadgets, and we're all always being outsmarted by machines, but at some level, that the drone beer delivery system is not actually going to deliver the beer, and so the gadgets fall apart, and you feel like a chump afterwards. Well, but the people who give it to you don't, because it solves an immediate problem, like the illuminated battery operating tie rack for your closet. Yes, it fails, but it solved that problem at the moment.
Right. Well. That's true. It's an immediate solution. And as I said, it's not like the people give you the illuminated tie rack and say, so here is, when the UJA fundraises for like trees in Israel, you get to buy one tree. You don't have to pay for the whole forest. You can get one tree. And it would be nice if you could say, like, I'm going to get like one timber of Dad's boat. And every year, we're going to add more timbers to the boat. And eventually there will be a boat here, maybe even an ark.
Okay. All right. Let's just stress to our listeners, you don't actually want a boat. You have, I'm sure, other expensive fantasies, but the boat was my fantasy. Let's speak.
I'm thinking actually of that comedy sketch you like so much, where.
Yes, I can't remember the comedian. It was years and years ago I listened to it, but he was trying to explain economics to his wife, spending economics, And he was going through the list of bills, and there were like $50 here, $100 here spent by the wife on things like clothes or, impulse purchases for the home. And anyways, tallying them up. And he said,
scented candles.
What?
Scented candles.
Right. Scented candles, all those wasteful things that women buy. And he's saying, look, you have to understand that you can't spend more than we take in. It's a simple principle. And then she said, well, what about your boat? And he said, I need my boat. Like, men see the things they have as essential, and women are always buying these ridiculous fripperies. Okay. All right. So gadgets fail, but to be fair, they solve a sort of temporary problem. And I think they are aimed at this market, the people who don't know what to buy their fathers. Okay. Sports paraphernalia.
Right.
This is something that doesn't apply to you at all, but it is something.
Golf equipment is God's gift to Father's Day shoppers. It's true. You can always, the golf is just an endless supply. I don't play golf. I do other things, but it is going to feel weird to buy like slam balls or rubber bands as a Father's Day present.
You mean for your gym?
Yeah. Dad, we've noticed you're doing really well with the 25-pound slam ball. We bought you a 30-pounder for this Father's Day. I mean, that's like that just requires more.
That was such a humble brag, David Frum. I just work out, I just work out really hard, but it would be so easier. I'm grateful you don't play golf, because then I would be a golf widow. But I could get you little festive golf shot glasses. I could get you the little crocheted things that go on the top of the golf club. Endless possibilities if you played golf.
Golf balls with your boss's face on them.
Okay, so sports paraphernalia is a category, but it doesn't help me personally. Okay, another big category is barbecue items.
Yes. Well, barbecue items have the opposite problem from gadgets, which is they last forever. I mean, I have indeed been the grateful recipient of barbecue items from you and the kids for past Father's Day, and I've got them all. They still work. They work like barbecue that long after the glaciers have buried Washington, and future archaeologists are digging through the remains. They are going to discover in great shape the barbecue
tongs. Yes, men of the 21st century use these sharp-edged tongs to bring their game meat off their crude cooking implements. Well, also, but the thing that I keep getting you, which does keep failing, is a meat thermometer. I always think that's a good gift.
So meat thermometers have two problems. The first is they are gadgets and they don't actually work that well.
Yeah.
And as they get more sophisticated, they work worse because they get more expensive. It's connected by Bluetooth to your phone, and it's not the Bluetooth to your phone thing. 20 minutes after the meat is burnt, it tells you take the thing off the grill. And we say, well, why didn't you tell me before? Well, the Bluetooth wasn't working fast enough. But the second thing is they're also a little undermining. They're a little like there's an implicit criticism in a meat thermometer, like you don't really know what you're doing. No, it's like it's like asking directions of barbecuing. Like men would be told what to do. It's like getting the wife the Peloton bike. You wouldn't. It's like, darling, you're overcooking the meat all the time. Here is a nice. You could take off 10 pounds with this bike in 2 weeks, no problem. Okay, no more meat thermometers. Damn! I just found a really good one. Okay, all right. Tools, also not something for you. No. Well, this is a thing that listeners to this program may not know. Is that one of the divisions of responsibility that we have in our house is if it's electronic, I do it. If it's mechanical, Danielle does it. That's right. You're tech support. Yeah, I'm tech support. But if it involves drilling, blasting, hammering, hanging. Those are all your things. And
Not
in fact,
hanging as in, hanging, like hanging pictures.
No, but one of the things that you are very proud of is your dead eye for hanging a picture at exact
at 10
level
paces. One nail, one try.
In fact, if I remember this right, I got you a set of DeWalt drills for a Mother's Day present years ago.
No, when we did this renovation long ago.
Oh, it was Brent and John.
Our builders gave me a set of power tools. It was like maybe after Christina's power washer that we talked about last week is maybe the best gift I've ever had. The DeWalt,
but you liked it both as a gift, but also as a salute of recognition that they were
right. No, if you gave me a set of power tools for Mother's Day, I don't know how I'd feel about that.
Right, but when like you were also like our household medical. It's like if our family doctor shared with you, gave you a stethoscope, you would say, okay, this comes from medical professional to medical professional. It's a gesture of respect.
Dr. Mom, yeah. No, okay, so it's true. I love the Home Depot and you don't. But tools can be good. Tools can be good depending on the dad who putters about. Okay, so tools.
And I think one of the things that is great. I bought. We were digitizing a bunch of photos, and I bought as a gift for the kids that I spent months down digitizing all these photos, and then I loaded them all. I was
grateful to you for that task. Thank you.
Onto a G drive with I think 4 terabytes of storage, which I think that was 4 terabytes per G drive, which costs at wherever I bought them from, like $150 a G drive. And I remember getting sort of interested in looking up, how much is that and what would that have cost? I looked it up, and in the year I graduated from college, 4 terabytes of storage would have cost something like $14 billion.
It'd be like those rooms, like those computer rooms. You remember in the 80s, you actually had whole computer rooms with towers as big as refrigerators. That was the terabyte storage.
No, that wasn't a terabyte. That was as much storage as is, in the 2007 iPhone. No, a terabyte. That's like when you saw Close Encounters with the Third Kind and the Martian spaceship came in. They had a terabyte. Now, a terabyte is a lot. And it's okay. So G drives, those are a real Father's Day. And it's a gadget that works. G drive is the one to have.
But that's only presuming that they're going to like digitize the family photos, which that's
right. Right. Which is, by the way, a great thing to do. And
right. And you did it. And that would normally have been a thing that fell to me. And I don't know why, but but it was tech. So you knew how to do it. And but
it's also one of the ways that technology has made the world better. I mean, I know a number of families, including some branches of my own, where people have quarreled to the point of family civil war over possession of photo albums.
Right. No, that's true.
And this is a problem nobody needs to have anymore.
Right.
You can digitize everyone. Now, if the family wants a fight anyway, maybe this is a solution that has actually taken away something the family wants, which is they're looking for something to fight about, and now they have to go find something else. But you can actually have family photos for everybody.
Yeah. No, okay. That's a good suggestion. Okay. The other thing that is very typical to give to a dad or a father-in-law are books. Preferably very thick books. Like you can't just say, hey, I'm enjoying this novel. I think you would too. Here's a copy. You can't do that. Yeah. There's a specific type of book that you give to dads or fathers.
Yes.
Father-in-law, sorry.
There is a specific, we've joked about this. I aspire to write one of these. And so these are books that are, as you say, they're thick, 700, 800 pages. They retail for $35 to $45. And the great thing about them is they are never expected to be read. That they've got a picture of an American president or a general or a baseball or football hero on them. They're very worthy. They get promoted on talk shows, and no one has to read them because they're there just as a statement of mutual respect. I
Like
am
the
the
power tools.
like the power tools. I am the worst person in the world to buy books for
Oh,
because
no one would dare buy books for you, David.
because I have weird specialized interests, and I also go into book rabbit holes. Like right now, I'm reading about African statues and the process of acquisition of Africa, and like
This is something you're writing for the Atlantic.
This is something I'm writing for the Atlantic. It's a long interest in the West African slave trade, and like you're just it's not, and I don't need the big new Smithsonian volume on it. I've got very specialized interests.
Right. No, none of us would dare, but you have to say that this differs a little bit, maybe not a lot, because there's another type of book. You're right. Like, here's the latest thick biography on Lincoln. Like, perfect.
Yeah.
Not for you, but for others. But then there's also the celebrity book. You once told me that there's this type of book that sells like, it's like the t-shirt at Les Mis.
I had this insight.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go on.
I had this insight back when I was working for President Bush. I was doing I was attending a fundraiser. Like I'd written some remarks. I was taken along for a fundraiser he did in the house of a very, very rich person. And it was a very grand house. And what was striking was, the house is 17,000 square feet. Marble and bathrooms and so on. And in the entire house, there are no books. There's no books anywhere. And finally we go to the room that is called the library, which is where the remarks are to be given. And there's this, what was then regarded as a gigantic TV. Now every sports bar in America would have a TV bigger than this, but in those days it was really something. And then there are like two columns on either side in which are loaded maybe 20 books. And each of the book had, one was by Ann Coulter, and one was by Patrick Buchanan, and one was by Rush Limbaugh. And each of the books had on the spine a picture of the author. And I had never seen that before. And then of course, there's a kind of book which is, look, you don't like books, you don't read books, you like TV, you like talk radio, but you like to buy books by the people you've seen on TV, but it's confusing because they're full of printed words, and so. How do I know which is the Ann Coulter book and which is the Rush Limbaugh book? I've got a picture of Ann Coulter on the spine of one, and a picture, and I can look at them, and they're like. I used to think about this with President Trump and how he would requote people from his favorite TV shows. It's like when you put the stuffed toys in the crib of the kids so they don't be scared, that he would reach for his Hannity and that would make him clutch it. It would make him feel better. There must also
be a liberal equivalent. Like,
for sure, there's a liberal equivalent.
I'm trying to think of who would be on the spine of the liberal equivalent.
Oh yes, they would have their own TV hosts. And I think liberals often like politicians more than the conservatives do.
Right, be like a bio of Beto O'Rourke or something.
Yeah, or the book by Beto O'Rourke. Right. Yeah. Right. And there would be Beto looking reassuringly out from the wall at you. But those are books.
Hillary and Bill Clinton books.
Right. Yeah. Right. They're not meant to be read. I remember reading Bill Clinton's memoir, and like the first 80 pages of it were really quite interesting. And then clearly he'd gone past his deadline. And so the first 80 pages he had taken 3 years on, and they were good. And then the next like 800 pages had been written in 6 months, and they were just throwing like old memos into it.
Well, and I give Obama this because he would also be in a liberal spine, library. He wrote real books, and really quite revealing books in ways.
Obama's a real and super ingenious writer. And he has a trick that I think is very, very clever. And he was doing this even when he wrote his first book, when I think he knew he had big ambitions in mind. Maybe he didn't admit it to others.
Right. This was Dreams of My Father.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there was something in mind. But whenever Obama had something to say that might potentially be disturbing to some large number of more conservative-minded Americans, he would say it in a very candid way, but he would say it in a way that took a long amount of space, in such a way that it's not, and with many interruptions and parentheses, it was impossible to quote. That you say, like, here's this thing where Obama is saying,
I smoked marijuana.
I'm not sure America is better than other countries, actually. I don't think we are the best country on earth, but he will take 450 words. He will say that, and it's not like paraphrastic, right? He will just take so when the Washington Post summary of the book comes out and says, Obama says, America not greatest country on earth, go quote it. It's 450 words long. And it's like, it's going to take inside page A17. No one's going to get there.
All right. Slight digression, but an interesting one. I enjoyed it. All right. Last thing. And this is where I think I think we can all really score. Clothes. Because let me just set it up and you can disagree or agree. Men will buy, even sartorially minded, like you like to dress nicely, like you like, especially, have a nice suit to go on TV and out, whatever. But men will buy the absolute necessity of what they need, like the minimum of what they need. 7 pairs of underwear. I have my 1 or 2 suits that I need for X. And then they don't buy anything more. And
we dread the shopping experience.
You dread the shopping experience. So actually, I think our most successful gifts to you have been when we've solved your shopping problem. And even though it comes out of the household budget, like you can't just have 1 pair of shorts,
right.
Like a man will have 1 pair.
Well, except your late father, who was a model in all things, he had 1 pair of shorts.
I know. And he wore them like since the Korean War. And no, but do you also remember like every year his secretary where he worked would give him a really nice sweater.
Yes. And
that was because, and it's like a good gift because he would never buy himself a really nice sweater.
Yes.
And it's sort of, maybe it's more the casual. I remember we had this argument over shoes for you. Like you had 1 pair of casual shoes, you had your athletic workout shoes, and you had your dress shoes, and you didn't see any reason why you would need more shoes.
Right. Exactly.
It's
but I remember about Pete's fancy sweaters from his beloved secretary, Ed Medican, was there was a culture clash. We discovered this after he died, is that Pete did not believe in changing the sweaters until he had worn the old ones out. And so when he died, we found that like this, he died in 2013. So we found like this, all the sweaters from like 2001 till 2013 were all still in the wrapping paper because he was working on the sweaters from 1991 to 2001. And so long as there was any life left in them, there's no point going on to the next volume in the series.
No, but I do remember, especially during the pandemic, like last year for your birthday or something. And men also don't really understand online shopping the way women do, if I may make a generalization. You didn't even know, like, you don't have to pay for this and you can return it for free. So I basically got you a whole bunch of casual wear for you to try on at home. And then
I was horrified. I was horrified. They're like 7. It was like, the whole place looked like a ready to wear salon. We had like,
I know, but you were also like,
and I had visions of bankruptcy. Like
the Visa bill coming in. It's like, no, I send it back. It takes 2, it's like 1 or 2 days and they refund your credit card. Like you're not even going to see these items on our Visa bill.
Yeah.
But that solved a lot of shopping problems for you because maybe the fundamental fact is that men hate shopping. They hate it more than what? They hate it more than anything.
I don't know. Taxes. Well, maybe this goes back to the greatest gift idea at all, the most fundamental, that story I love about Calvin Trillin and his wife.
Oh, yeah. Please tell that story. I love that story.
So, Calvin Trillin, who was a late writer for The New Yorker, a very, very witty man, had this story. He wrote this column in the early 70s about getting a Christmas gift from his wife, which was a piece of paper with a map of Cyprus on it. And at the time, Cyprus was a real hotspot. Greek, Turk, great risk of great power conflict. And he said, "What's this?" And she said, "For the next year, I will read every story in the New York Times about Cyprus. And if something happens there that you need to know about, I will tell you. But if it doesn't, I won't. And you just need to tell me what level of problem from Cyprus you need to know about, and I'll be on. And just set the, like we say now, like set your Google notifications. And he thought for a moment, he said, nuclear war. If anything on Cyprus seems likely to lead to a nuclear war, I want to know. She said, otherwise leave it to me. Got it. Cyprus is mine.
Yeah. Well, we have this arrangement where like the royals are mine, right, David? I only let you know when there's a kind of need to know urgent moment about what Harry and Meghan have done lately.
Right.
And actually, we have this deal the reverse way. Basically, I let you think about most of the world problems until I need to know.
Right. Well, that's also like
I'm taking the power tools to our house.
Well, that's also like the old Jewish joke about the husband and wife who've worked out the division between the big problems and the little problems.
Yes, please tell this joke. We may have told this on the podcast before, but go for it.
But that the man says we have a division of labor in my house. I decide the big things, and my wife decides the little things. My wife decides where the children go to school, where we live, who our friends will be. I decide whether Russia should go to war with China.
And thus the transfer of wealth from men to women and women spending. All right. Well, I hope this is helpful to our listeners. And David, thank you as always for joining me. What?
Can I say one more thing before we go?
I guess so.
Okay. This I want to say a serious thing before we go. And we said this in the last podcast and it had to be cut. And so I don't want to lose it in this one, which is Father's Day has always historically struck me as one of the more absurd of the manufactured holidays, worse even than Valentine's Day.
Right. You just for our listeners who didn't hear you talk about Valentine's Day, you hate faked Hallmark holidays that
holidays that are obviously manufactured for merchandising reasons.
Right.
And Father's Day is I always thought was the worst of them. But you realize that we live in a world in which the role of fathers is not, in many families, can't be taken for granted. They're absent, and men who undertake this role, especially the ones who are sort of debating amongst whether to take it on fully, may need some encouragement and reward from their families and societies for stepping up in ways that the world and their families and their children need them to step up. So maybe it shouldn't be this way, but it is. That this is a role that is vital in every family and demands recognition. So to all the dads out there, especially those struggling to do their best, happy Father's Day.
Oh, that's so nice. Do you remember when our children, Miranda, Nathaniel, our eldest, were babies, young kids, and I remember my mom looking at me and saying, I said, what are like the differences between now and then when you were, a new mother? And she said, well, the equipment is obviously better. She was looking at the, battery operated bassinet that swung.
The regard for safety has greatly improved.
It's greatly improved. And then she said, and fathers are so much better. Like the involved dad of today, that's a good thing too. So
that's a good thing.
Right.
All right.
Well, thank you. Let's hope we don't have to re-record this again, but I David, I know how many demands on your time. You don't usually do podcasts. So it's a special treat for us to have you, and happy Father's Day to you. You're going to get a meat thermometer, some golf crochet club warmers. You're going to get.
I want a Darth Vader beer drone.
Yeah. Okay. We'll work on that. All right. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining. Bye. Well, I hope David was helpful. Gave you some ideas for what to get the men or fathers in your lives. I realized David is the second family member we've had on in the past couple of weeks. We had my eldest daughter, Miranda, of course, joined to talk about dating apps. Realized we're just a whole family of splainers. Next up, as mentioned, is Matt Feeney. He is the author of Little Platoons, A Defensive Family in a Competitive Age. Before I bring on Matt, just a reminder that if you're enjoying these conversations, you love the podcast, please consider becoming a sponsor at patreon.com/femsplainers. Your contributions help whatever you can afford each month. And as I like to say, we're friends with benefits. In addition to helping keep this podcast going, you'll also receive our exclusive monthly bonus episode in which you get to ask our guests the questions. You'll get our monthly newsletter. You'll get an invitation to our monthly virtual cocktail party. And at certain levels, you can even get the podcast early and ad-free. So please consider sponsoring us again at patreon.com/femsplainers. And now I'll bring on Matt just after a quick message from this week's sponsor. With businesses moving many of their operations off-site and having to make tough decisions about their employees, why not consider using Bambee for your HR and save money? Because when running a business, HR issues can kill you. Wrongful termination suits, minimum wage requirements, labor regulations, and HR manager salaries aren't cheap, an average of $70,000 a year. Bambee, spelled Bambee, was created specifically for small business. You can get a dedicated HR manager, craft HR policy, and maintain your compliance, all for just $99 a month. With Bambee, you can change HR from your biggest liability to your biggest strength. Your dedicated HR manager is available by phone, email, or real-time chat. From onboarding to terminations, they customize your policy to fit your business and help you manage your employees day to day, all for $99 a month. Month to month, no hidden fees. You can cancel at any time. You didn't start your business because you wanted to spend time on HR compliance. Let Bambee help and get your free HR audit today. So go to Bambee.com/fem right now to schedule your free HR audit. That's Bambee.com/fem, spelled BAM to the BEE.com/fem. Matt, welcome to the Femsplainers.
Thank you.
I think actually you're going to be doing some dad-splaining today.
Yeah, I guess that's right. That's right. Happy to do that.
Well, I really enjoyed your book, Little Platoons. I liked a lot of the philosophy you brought into it. It wasn't sort of your usual look at parenting when you had a lot of interesting philosophical looks into some of our modern behaviors. You looked at the conservative influence on the family. So it wasn't just like a parenting book. It was really a sort of profound observations on how we parent today. So let's start with what you mean by even the term little platoons and why you feel family is in need of defense right now.
By Little Platoons, I'm quoting Edmund Burke's phrase from Reflections on the Revolution in France. And the phrase is meant to refer to small-scale human associations, connections, such as the family, but also churches and church congregations, civic associations, small, guilds, trade associations, that kind of thing. That would have been how people connected with each other when he was writing around the late 1700s. And so, I have to say that my use of the term "little platoons" is a little bit ironic in this context. On one hand, I fully cop to the sentiments expressed or implied in the phrase "little platoon," the idea that a family is a kind of fighting unit, and I really wanted to convey that in my book. But on the other hand, I also wanted to convey that there's a certain danger that comes from viewing, that comes from family life viewed in this way or experienced in this way, which is the natural way to experience it. When the environment in which we are doing this as parents, especially, is one of intense meritocratic competition, then our fond attachments to our little platoons and our fighting attitude, our fighting solidarity and loyalty with our family becomes this kind of ironic inheritance, because once we start fighting for our family in this environment, we find our efforts more than welcome by certain institutions that want to aid us in our efforts to do well by our children and outcompete other parents.
Well, I think you and I probably have similar views about parenting. My children are now out of the home, but definitely parenting in the 90s, where, as you point out, and I've actually written extensively about, this was when, and we're talking again, like educated women, career-minded women, in a kind of rebellion against the kind of the 80s, 70s feminism that made career the be-all and everything, postponing children, put everything into your work, don't worry about marriage. Suddenly, we all started having kids, and we decided that, the workplace kind of sucks if you want to be a mother, especially with your small children. And so we sort of watched this whole movement of highly educated, talented women going home. And it's as if I think this is partially to blame for the competitiveness that you describe in your book, channeling all those ambitions now into their children. And I just remember having my first child and holding her as a small baby out on our front stoop. We lived in New York at the time. And my neighbor, who had just also had a baby, asking me if I had yet enrolled my 3-month-old newborn into swimming classes at the Y, as she had done. So there has been, as you point out, there is more intensity, we're putting more time into the role as parents than maybe any previous generation. And let's talk about how this competitiveness now manifests itself.
The way I describe it in the book is a handful of ways. I kind of, in the book goes through kind of the various stages of life of children and parents together, starting with preschool. And so in the preschool, I mean, so far as I know, the preschool examples that I give are fairly unusual. And then I'm describing a Manhattan environment where it's largely high achieving, high income, highly ambitious parents doing their best to get their kids into a finite number of preschool slots. And these preschools, so one of the ways in which it manifests itself is this, as you say, people at very young ages trying to get their kids, starting in the process of getting their kids benefits, a leg up in various ways. And so in the preschool market, it happens where sometimes you'll see that parents will enroll their children or seek to enroll their children in these highly competitive preschool markets, seek to enroll their children in the best preschools when the children aren't even born yet.
There's the mothers are pregnant at the admission fair.
And that is also, I joke about this in the book because on one hand, you read about this when you read on this topic. And then I went to a preschool fair where I actually saw this. I saw a woman standing next to me, and she was conversing with a representative of a French immersion preschool, which had a pretty imposing profile when you came upon it. The French flag and pictures of the French countryside, and it seemed like a real desirable preschool to go to for that reason. And the couple standing next to me were talking to a guy, and he said something like, "Oh, how old is your?" He was speaking in a French accent. He said something, "How old is your?" And then he caught himself and he said, "Oh, that's right, negative." He said, I think that's what he said, negative months, meaning that the kid wasn't even born yet. And so when at that point, as I say in the book, I wasn't really expecting to see this. I thought, well, this is just a story people tell. And then lo and behold, it shows up right next to me in this preschool fair. And sure enough, the woman who was standing next to me, I look over and noticed that she was in fact pregnant. So the stereotype came to life right at my side. And so that's one, so that's one way in which people just get very intent on and out competing each other for the best preschool slots in these, and again, it seems to be the point I make, especially in the preschool chapter, but it's something that persists throughout the book, is that it's really the people who come to the process with the greatest sense of agency, who fall into the traps that I described. The people who think that they're going to get everything for their kids, or they want to do everything for their kids, and they may well, in fact, get everything for their kids. But the argument that I want to call into question the disposition of family life as they live it, that results from these exertions, these competitive exertions that they do, and how in the end what it ends up creating is an attitude of conformity to a kind of a posture, a kind of obsequious posture toward the institutions that have little advantages to hand out.
Right.
And so so in preschool, the preschool environment is where you see it in the Manhattan example. You see it in a lot of different ways, both kind of appalling and vaguely disquieting, where people just lower themselves and abase themselves to please these preschool gatekeepers, so they can get their kid in, and the gatekeepers clearly are kind of lording it over these rich people. It's a very ironic setup where these lowly preschool heads and stuff they have such contempt for the parents who are groveling to get into their preschools. It's a kind of, in a certain way, it's the kind of paradigm case for the larger kind of structure that I'm describing.
I remember, again, with our first child in New York, we were this was all new to us. We had no idea that this was what the landscape was like. And we went to an open house, or really more parental. As you say, they're looking at the parents as much as they're looking at the kids, because what can you tell about a 2-year-old,
right.
really?
Right.
So there was like 6 of us sitting around, learning about this Jewish preschool that apparently we found out everybody wanted to get into who was Jewish. And they went around the circle and they asked, what you did and what you thought you could contribute to the school, not financially, but in terms of Jewish culture. And unfortunately, they asked my husband and I first, and we were like, oh, we're just really excited to have a, potentially Jewish education for our child, early start in Hebrew. Bam, wrong answer. The next person said he was like a well-known chef. He had a restaurant that everybody was trying to get into. And he indicated that if his kid got into the preschool, the teachers and staff would have no issue getting in. And it kept getting it kept getting upped as they went around the circle. And we just came out of there utterly despondent because we had just absolutely blown it by not knowing this. And you talk about that, I mean, in the sort of the competition in the schools and the college admissions process, all of which I think people generally agree are madness. What I liked is you got into some of the more fine-tuning things, like in these schools, they've completely destroyed the idea of play, because even when you're playing, it has to be playing with a purpose, playing to gain skills. Talk a little bit about the play spirit that we're sucking out of our children.
Because the play does not kind of exist for itself in the minds of parents who are anxious about the future. Play exists as a way of mastering the future. It's like, well, you engage in sports and you do different things to improve your chances of getting into college. And so the spirit of kind of future mastery infuses the entire mechanism of play in sports, so that everything gets systematized and scientized, and kids are viewed as being kids go from being just kind of kids who are playing a game to kids who have these various kind of capacities that the scientists of childhood sports can divvy up and optimize. And so play becomes subject to a kind of spirit of optimization.
Right. And that goes from those, as we were just saying, the preschool admissions, where many of these schools will watch your child, quote unquote, play, and then report back to the parent, some of the issues that their child needs to work on those scissoring skills. But you also, and what I found really fascinating section, again, this whole thing, and this is, I think, a very pretty uniquely American problem of sports, and especially soccer. But it starts at a very early age, the pressure to get kids into these leagues. I remember, a friend of mine saying, when my eldest and second child were like 6 and 4 respectively, that if I didn't enroll them right away into some sort of soccer club, that's it. Their future was over.
So I mean, one contrast that it comes in passing in the book, but it's gained in significance in my mind.